Okay, so I guess we've got a bit of a beef happening between Nate Diaz and Brendan Schaub, which I did not honestly see coming this week, but I am all for it. So I'll give you the backstory. Basically, if you don't know, Schaub and Diaz have had a little bit of history dating back to when Conor McGregor fought Floyd Mayweather, and I guess Brendan Schaub was working for Showtime. And there's a video that circulated for a while after that, and it was Schaub and Nate Diaz basically having a run-in backstage. I think it was after the fight. And I guess Nate had some issues with something that Schaub said. It looks like Diaz is basically confronting him about something he said. It's kind of just Diaz being Diaz. Schaub walks away and Diaz is calling him a pussy and a bitch or whatever, and that's kind of it. That's all that really happened. Now, Brendan Schaub goes on Rogan and tells the story and kind of embellished it a little bit, to be honest. I remember listening to it and then watching the video and thinking, yeah, he kind of exaggerated what happened a little bit there. Made himself out to look a little bit tougher, or like to act a little bit tougher than he was. But nonetheless, nothing really happened from there. And I haven't heard Schaub talk shit about Nate at all on his podcast. I just assumed that that was just a one-off thing and that they didn't have any beef. But I guess Brendan Schaub put out a video on his channel last week where he was talking about CTE and his good friend Shane Carwin, who was his training partner. Shane Carwin was a world champion heavyweight, really good fighter, and they started their careers together, and obviously Shane Carwin went a lot further with it, and as a consequence he's ended up with a pretty bad case of CTE, according to Schaub at least, and he's really struggling and he can't hold down a job. And yeah, UFC fighters, they don't get health insurance. They don't get any, like, I don't think they get any like retirement money, like a pension or anything like that. I don't think there's anything really for UFC fighters. And Brendan was basically talking about how he's struggling and he needs help.
I face serious challenges in meeting basic everyday expenses for food, shelter.
I think he said he turned down a very, very lucrative offer, Brendan did, to get back in and have a boxing match, I think from Gamebred. And he said there's no amount of money that would be enough for him to risk his health because he's still doing pretty well. I think some people would argue that Brendan does suffer from CTE, and I get it. It's kind of a bit of a joke because of the way he talks and stuff, but it's kind of not funny. Like, I don't think telling people they have CTE is necessarily that funny. Like, it's a pretty serious thing, especially like Brendan. He's young, he's got 3 kids and a wife. I hope no fighter ever suffers from CTE or any real serious consequences after their careers, especially if the UFC isn't forking out and helping them with their healthcare. But so I guess Nate saw the clip or got wind of it. Maybe one of his boys showed him Schaub crying on YouTube, and he tweets out, "Brendan the big old pussy Schaub." When I saw that, I thought he was just referring to Brendan passing up on a fight and calling him a pussy for that. I didn't know Brendan went on and was basically bawling his eyes out on his channel, but I guess that's what he was referring to. So then the weekend goes by and Schaub jumps on the Schaub show on his YouTube channel yesterday, and he fucking cooked Nate. And I mean, proper cooked him. I know it's corny to say, but this was a 10-7. Like, Nate really looks like a fucking dickhead here. I'll play the video, I'll play some highlights, and yeah, I'll play a little bit of the video.
Whole narrative, your entire narrative, oh, fuck the man. You're not tough to me. I know tough guys. Tough guys don't get on the internet and tweet at another grown fucking man who beat the shit out of them when they're crying or they're getting emotional because their friend of 20 fucking years is having major issues, suicidal thoughts. I don't give a fuck you're from Sacramento. That's your biggest thing? That's it? That's the narrative? I know tough guys from Sacramento. What are you gonna do, Nate? What are you gonna do? Volume punch me, motherfucker? What are you gonna do? Out grapple me? In what fucking sense? What world are you living in? This is the real world. I'm not hard to get a hold of. Pull the fuck up. I don't have a posse. I don't need one, bud. I'll drop my kid off at fucking practice, roll over, twist your fucking neck off, and then pick him up just in time unscathed with a Diet Coke.
First of all, the volume punch line was fucking epic. That was brilliant. Brendan's actually kind of a witty dude when he's not trying to do stand-up comedy, because this was a fucking really good comeback. And he has a great point. Like, what is Nate going to do? He's not going to knock him out. He's half his size. I think Nate Diaz is probably like 185. Schaub's like 245. 6'4". He's on that Joe Rogan cocktail. And Nate Diaz is a fucking stoner who runs marathons. And don't get me wrong, obviously Nate Diaz is a tough guy, but pound for pound, yeah, maybe Nate Diaz had a better career, but he's lost like 13 fights. Brendan Schaub was in the top 10 of the heavyweights in his peak. Obviously, he retired pretty early. He didn't have a hell of a lot of success, but he knocked out Mirko Krokop. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and size fucking matters. That's what it comes down to. I liked his line about being from Sacramento and being tough, because this whole Stockton thing that the Diaz brothers go on about, I don't really get it, because I guess Stockton's a tough neighborhood, but it's not like it's fucking something to be like bragging about. Like, you're from Stockton. It's just, isn't it just a suburb of fucking Sacramento? I think that was a funny line from Schaub as well. Now, Ariel Helwani went on his show today, and he's taking this as a literal fight call out. Like, this fight's actually going to happen. He had Craig Jones on, and Craig Jones said he was open to promoting it on CJI, which would be next year, I guess. Fucking, I would be keen to watch that, but if I had a choice between boxing, grappling, or MMA in a fight between Schaub and Diaz, it has to be a boxing match. It has to be. I just think grappling is just too boring, especially when there's beef involved. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, submit someone? If you get him in a choke, are you gonna let go? Like, if you've got this big of a beef, you can't be having a grappling match. You have to punch each other. They're not gonna fight MMA, obviously, but they should fight a boxing match. And to be completely honest, if Nate doesn't back this up, if Nate just pretends like nothing happened, he looks like a bit of a fucking douchebag. And I'm a Nate Diaz fan, obviously. He's fucking, I got a poster of him sitting over my right shoulder here. I'm a fan of Nate Diaz, but sometimes I feel like Nate kind of walks around acting like a 14-year-old kid trapped in a man's body. He picks fights with everybody. He's kind of a bully. Like, I get it, he's a tough guy. I wouldn't want to scrap with him, obviously. I think Schaub has taken so much shit from so many online trolls on Reddit and Twitter and YouTube. There's literally a fucking channel called Podcast Cringe that is basically dedicated to just hanging shit on Brendan Schaub. And the thing is with those trolls, they're all anonymous online trolls. You're never gonna run into them face to face. You don't even know what they look like, who they are. But when someone like Nate Diaz, who is a fighter and is a public figure, if he tweets at you and calls you a fucking pussy, then you have to respond. And I think Schaub came out with the perfect response. I don't think he looked bad at all in his response. For first time in a very long time, actually agree with Brendan here. If Nate just pretends like this never happened and brushes it under the rug, he kind of looks like a douchebag. And I guess he did see Brendan's response because he tweeted back, "I think you'd be surprised," which is obviously a dig at, like, this. That's one of Brendan's famous catchphrases that he used to say on Joe Rogan all the time, and it's kind of something that people hang shit on him about. I think you'd be surprised. He says it way too much, but I don't think anyone would be surprised. Like, is there anybody who really thinks Diaz would stand a chance in either MMA, boxing, or grappling against a heavyweight Brendan Schaub? Nate Diaz lost a boxing match to Jake Paul, and Brendan Schaub is a lot bigger than Jake Paul. It kind of just feels like Brendan's done with people shitting on him, and especially when it's a former fighter doing it, he's just not going to take it anymore. And I like this version of Brendan Schaub way better than the guy who's trying to always be funny and do stand-up comedy. Like, I think this is who he should have been from the start. He should have just been a fight analyst, former UFC fighter who knows a lot about the sport and can sometimes be funny and witty. But the stand-up thing, I think his ego got a little bit out of control. I think Joe Rogan obviously is at fault for that. I'm pretty sure his podcast, The Fighter and the Kid, was like the second most popular podcast in the world at one point, years ago. I think ultimately he let his ego get out of control, and he started talking down to his audience, which tends to happen with these guys for some reason, and talking down to other people. And then when you're like doing a comedy tour and people see your special and it's really not fucking funny and you're kind of acting like your shit doesn't stink, and also just the dishonesty, like he lied a lot about small things, like not massive things really, like who cares, but when you become across disingenuous, I think people have a problem with that, and that's when people really turned on him. I think if he could just be a little bit more humble and keep this energy, like don't let people fucking talk so much shit about you, especially fighters, I think he can have a bit of a resurgence. And it feels like, judging by the comments on the video response that he made for Diaz, it seems like everybody likes this version of Schaub a lot better. As for Diaz, it's not really a great look, to be honest. You picked a fight with a guy and he responded and accepted the fight. And I think if you're Nate Diaz, you can't just back away from this now. You got to set something up. You got to set up either a grappling match, a boxing match, or just fucking go and pay him a visit, I guess, and do it behind closed doors, have a sparring session somewhere. I don't know. Whether or not this will actually happen, I think this would actually do big numbers. Nate needs a payday. He didn't get paid from his last fight with Masvidal, apparently. I think Brendan could probably use a payday. His business and channel doesn't seem to be going as well as it once was. So let's set something up. I think if we get enough traction, something might actually be set up. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Would you pay to watch this fight? And who do you think would win? If you made it this far, I appreciate it. Cheers.